All right, guys, thanks for coming this morning. You all found the coffee. That's always the first important step to a successful meeting. It's where is the caffeine? I don't understand that. All right, so we're going to talk about a disease state that I'm sure you all know very well called Blepharitis. Very common in all your eye practices out there, but very poorly understood. It's the essence of what Blepharitis treats, is Blepharitis. And we're going to find out the most important word in understanding Blepharitis is, and I'll ask anybody who's already watched my webinar, what's the most important word to understanding this disease?
Biofilm?
Boom! Very good. That's the key word. In fact, as we go through the lecture today, if I ask a question about anything, just answer biofilm, but probably be right 90% of the time. So let's talk about what Blepharitis is and what it's not. Blepharitis means lid inflammation. Bleph is lids, itis is inflammation, so it means lid inflammation. That's all it means. It doesn't mean scurf in the lashes. But you ask any doctor out there, and I was one of them. We come through our training programs and we sort of leave not with a really good understanding of Blepharitis. No one really talks about it or teaches it well in any of these courses because it's not well understood. And you leave with the understanding that if you see scurf in the lash line, it's Blepharitis. If you don't see it, well, it's got to be something else. We use that as a diagnostic tool. But it's really incorrect. We shouldn't do that. It's kind of lazy medicine. Because what's inflamed here? Is that chunk of scurf inflamed? Is the lash inflamed? Blepharitis means lid inflammation. That's what it means, an inflamed lid. That's what we've got to tie it to. So remember that as we go through. Blepharitis simply means lid inflammation. Now what about this term scurf that we use? Do you all know the medical definition of the word scurf? There isn't one. Crap, junk, debris, something on the surface not supposed to be there. I don't know what the hell it is. We'll call it scurf. Catch-all term. There's nothing medical behind it, and we still use that in eye medicine. They were using that term in dentistry in the 1600s when they talked about, well, you could scrape off someone's teeth. They called it scurf. They don't call it scurf anymore. They call it plaque now. Maybe we can do a little bit better actually in eye medicine as well and get rid of this silly word scurf. Now, these Blepharitis patients, all the research says, well, about 2/3 of all your patients walking in the door have some form of lid marking disease and treatable disease. But what you're going to learn today is this number is very inaccurate. It's not even close to 65%. It's more like 95%.
Yeah.
If you're really looking for Blepharitis with the definition of lid inflammation, now that's what you got to remember, then the numbers go sky high. Everybody's got some degree of Blepharitis. Now what are we going to call this disease? We're going to call it Blepharitis, we're going to call it dry eye, we're going to call it MGD, we're going to call it aqueous insufficiency. Let's call it dry eye Blepharitis syndrome. That's what we should call this disease, DEBS for short. Dry eye Blepharitis syndrome, which means this is a syndrome. It's a plethora of different presentations, lots of different symptoms that go with this disease, and it looks differently depending on what stage of life you're in. Blepharitis in a 10-year-old looks different than Blepharitis in a 20-year-old versus 40 versus 60 versus 80. It looks different at every stage, and this disease has fooled us that way because it lasts an entire lifetime, but it looks different as we go through life. I can't think of one other disease that does that. So it's no wonder this disease has been fooling us for so long. But it's the same disease every step of the way. Dry eye Blepharitis syndrome. Now the dry eye part, if we want to talk about aqueous insufficiency as actually being dry, well that's end-stage Blepharitis. And I'll go through the steps here and point all this out to you. That makes it so easy to understand. It's so very clear. Nothing we're going to go through today is complicated. It's all easy stuff. This disease, whereas before it's been thought of as complex, confusing, overlapping presentations of different diseases, we'll never really understand it, hard to treat, you'll find out it's the exact opposite. This disease is simple. It's the easiest eye disease there is to understand. Once you understand one word. And again. What's that word?
Biofilm.
It answers everything we see.
Right.
Now I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to copy that down on a piece of paper and be able to memorize it and regurgitate it back to me. No one's doing it. That's an impossible task, isn't it? You know, I appreciate the work they put into this. This is the dues too. And certainly a lot of work went into this, but how does this help understand this disease? Which should be easy to understand, but this just shows how confusing the current mainstream acceptance of dry eye, mainstream understanding of dry eye is. No, where do you enter all this maze, this mess? You know, all these auto feedback loops, it feeds here, it feeds there. I mean, I don't know. That would drive me crazy trying to figure that thing out. This is the best illustration of what's wrong with our understanding of this disease. It is very confusing and poorly understood. But they do have one thing right. There is obstruction of the meibomian gland orifice that occurs. But it's not because of keratin. That looks a little simpler, doesn't it? It's a little simpler. This is what helps us understand this disease because it's straightforward. It is simple. It's straight, linear occurrences, one after the other.
Right.
That leads to inflammation. Then once you get inflammation, how it marches through the lid depends on our age and what structures are being involved. And you'll see just how easy this is. We're not inventing anything new here. All these concepts are all proven concepts that goes into making up our current understanding, or our understanding of dry eye disease. Lid hygiene, we've known about that for decades. We've been recommending it to our patients forever, not that it's done any good. People hate doing it. It doesn't really help. But we sort of think it's important. We see stuff there, we think maybe that shouldn't be there, but patients can't get it off. The fact that dry eye disease is inflammatory based, that's pretty well accepted now. Inflammation plays a big role in this. Biofilm, there's the key word I keep talking about. We've known about biofilms for centuries. Form sensing gene activation is one of the newest concepts here. Been around since 1968. And then Staph aureus, virulence factors, we've known about those for decades as well. Now, these concepts, every single line item, every single concept here is proven. So I'll have doctors say, well, is your new theory proven? Well, every part of it's proven. Every single part of it is proven science. It's no, this is theory. Just putting them together, that's what's new. Putting them together in a new way, tell a new story about dry eye disease. That's what you're going to learn. But we have to want to learn a new way to understand dry eye disease. We can't get stuck in this old dogma of complex, confusing, different diseases that overlap. And you see, none of that stuff makes any sense. This makes perfect sense. This is common sense. And common sense should really rule today. Now remember, Blepharitis means lid inflammation, nothing more. It doesn't mean scurf. And that's the last time I'm going to use that word. I want you guys to start using the word biofilm. Biofilm when you talk to other professionals, but when you talk to patients, it's best to use the word plaque.
Okay.
Because the biofilm in our mouth, we call it plaque. Dentists call it plaque. And patients are familiar with that term. So use the word plaque in speaking to patients. So if inflammation is the end point, what's the starting point? If we're going to have an effect on this disease, it'd be nice to know how the inflammation starts, right? Well, it starts right down here with biofilm. Bacteria want to survive, and in order to survive, they build biofilms. You know, bacteria have been on this planet for eons longer than we've even existed as a species, right? Been around forever. How did they do that? Tremendous survival strategies and techniques, and the main one is they build a biofilm. The biofilm lets their densities go up. The increased densities turns on form sensing gene activation, and that produces virulence factors, and the virulence factors cause inflammation. So this is how we're going to get to inflammation. Virulence factors. Now, virtually all bacteria produce biofilms. This is how they survive in nature. If they weren't in a biofilm, they wouldn't be around. Something would make a meal out of them. So that's a big biofilm up on a hill. Big medieval fortress. It's impenetrable. Now, whoever built that fortress built it to be impenetrable, keep the outside world outside and allow them to survive inside. That's exactly what biofilms are for, and why bacteria build these things. They actually construct them and then live in them, just like a fortress. Keeps the outside world outside. They're impenetrable. Antibiotic drops cannot penetrate a biofilm fortress. A surgical scrub before cataract surgery can't penetrate a biofilm. Our own white cells can't penetrate a biofilm. Nothing can. They're really incredible structures, like Kevlar armor. Here's another way to think about a biofilm. Single-family home versus a big, huge apartment complex. So why do I have a single-family home? Well, I have a 5-year-old son at home, and he has a 5-year-old biofilm. You see, we all have biofilms. The moment the lid margin gets colonized with bacteria, they start building biofilms. That's what they do. So when's the lid colonized with bacteria? Day 2 of life, 3, I don't really know. I don't think anyone's done any studies to know when the bacteria start living there, but as soon as they do, they start building biofilms. So, pretty early in life, they began. My son's got a 5-year-old biofilm. You can't pack too many bacteria into a little, scant, thin 5-year-old biofilm. It's just not mature enough. But in 50 years, he'll have a nice, thick biofilm. A 50-year-old biofilm that you can pack trillions of bacteria into. And that lets their numbers go up. So that makes sense. The older the biofilm, the thicker it is. The thicker it is, the more people you can pack, the more bacteria you can pack into the biofilm. So the numbers go way up. Now this is the only study I'm going to mention. This is a study that proves the bacteria in the lid margin are biofilm formers. They looked at cataract patients that underwent an uncomplicated cataract surgery. Before they wheeled them out of the operating room, they swabbed everywhere. Now these were standard cataract patients. They had a surgical scrub done before surgery to sterilize everything. Cataract surgery went fine. Before they rolled them out, they swabbed. What was still there? What was living there? What has survived during the whole surgical process?
Biofilm.
I'm sorry?
Biofilm.
Biofilm, exactly right. Biofilm had survived. And within that biofilm, bacteria had survived. And out of the Eye culture, 16 were positive with 34 different bugs, 34 different bacteria. After everything. They're leaving the OR. So the bacteria is still there all through the surgery. 32 out of the 34 bacteria were biofilm forms. So they're there. And they're hard to get rid of, as the study indicates. So no wonder we still occasionally get really horrible cases of endophthalmitis after a cataract surgery. They grow everywhere, these biofilms. They're on everything. You won't believe how many places these biofilms live in nature. Bottom of the ocean, on glaciers in Antarctica. All you need is 3 things. If you have moisture, a surface, and nutrients, you'll get a biofilm. Every time. They're amazing, amazing structures. Now this biofilm you can see. Most biofilms you can't, but this one's thick enough, I think you can see that one. It's the bane of industry. They plug up pipes, these biofilms. But objects you're more familiar with, how about a pacifier? You think there's a biofilm on a pacifier? Yep, there sure is. A nice, thriving slime layer, if you will, of this biofilm. This pacifier has hit the carpet a few times. You can see the carpet fibers there. Fido's gotten involved. It's got dog hair on it. Yeah. You know what? First time moms, with the pacifier, hits the floor. What do? It's scrub it in the sterilizer, cook it. Back. Second time round, it hits the floor. Just pick it up. On the pants and back in the baby's head.
That's what people do.
Yeah. Well, if we showed that to second, third time moms, maybe they'd be like the first time.
Mine were thumb suckers, thank God.
Yeah, well, who knows what's on that fountain? What about our sink strainers in our kitchens? You can't see them, these biofilms. But I'll tell you what, if you had a $200,000 confocal scanning microscope in your kitchen, you'd see your biofilms all over the place.
Yeah.
It takes these special confocal scanning microscopes.
Can you do effects on stuff like that?
You should see.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like a big one.
Wherever you see found biofilm, hit with Blepharitis. Yeah, see, there's a biofilm on your six trainer. Now yours won't look like that because you don't have this special microscope. But they're really sort of invisible, these things. You just can't see them. But the microscope can. What about the lid margin? Well, yes. Now we can't stick a healthy lid under a confocal scanning microscope, but this one was prepped for an EM micrograph, and you can see the biofilm peeling up off the back of the lid margin there. It's a surface, there's nutrients, there's moisture, it's a biofilm. And what have we been calling it forever in eye medicine? Scarf. I used the word again.
So weird, Dave.
Now we know what it is, right?
Yeah.
Before it was like, oh, there's something there, it's crud, it's junk, it's crap, it's not supposed to be there, we'll call it scarf. It's a biofilm. It's supposed to be there from the bacterial standpoint. We don't want it there, but it's certainly understandable. No one has sterile eyelids. That's why every single person in the world, right now at this moment, has a biofilm in the lid margins. Think about that. Everybody has biofilm there. No one has sterile lids. You hear the word keratin used a lot on the lecture circuits. Keratinized lid margin. Well, first of all, the back half of the eyelid is non-keratinized stratified skinless epithelium. No keratin back there. No reason for keratin to be back there. It's biofilm, not keratin. So they were close. Whoever first said that saw that stuff. Don't know what the stuff is. It's on the surface of the skin. Looks abnormal. Keratin. Maybe it's keratin, and it, that sort of took off and we latched onto it. Well, it's not. It's biofilm. Keratin's not sticky. It's dry, flaky. Hair's made out of keratin. Dandruff is keratin. It's dry, flaky stuff. The keratin can't just come down and wrap around an eyelash shaft. That biofilm formed on that eyelash when the eyelash was probably down there in its dormant stage. The biofilm invades the lash follicle, and it gets filled up, wraps around the lash grows, out it comes, and you get to see what was wrapped around the lash that was down inside. So the biofilm's everywhere on these lids. So the biofilms allow the bacterial densities to go up. The numbers go way up the thicker the biofilm gets. And that makes the bacteria more virulent. Well, why is that? It's the same species of bacteria, right? So Staph epi and Staph aureus. But higher numbers, now they get pathogenic. Why is that? Well, this is the fascinating part, I think anyway. Quorum sensing gene activation. This was discovered in 1968 by Dr. John Woody Hastings down at Harvard. He discovered that bacterial populations as a whole can sense when they hit a certain quorum, a certain number, a certain density. And when they hit that quorum, genes turn on in this bacterial population. The genes turn on and start producing virulence factors, toxins, poisons, if you will. But only after they hit the quorum. And these toxins, exotoxins, endotoxins, enzymes, superantigens. You guys remember toxic shock syndrome? Back in the 80s, maybe 90s? Excuse me.
Yes.
Killing people, right?
Right.
That was a Staph aureus superantigen that was growing in a biofilm. And that superantigen diffused into the tissue, into the bloodstream, activated every single T cell it came into contact with. You got a massive immune response, then you got vascular collapse and you got death, toxic shock. Now that's a pretty powerful superantigen. And that's what superantigens do, they activate all T cells. Now not all the toxins Staph aureus produces are superantigens, but some of them are. And now they're being pumped out onto that lid margin once they hit quorum sensing. So it's kind of like your meibomian glands, now they get to live in the Springfield toxic waste dump. They get to live in this vat of poisons every second of every day. Now just think about that for a second. A very important gland in the eyelid margin, we have dozens of them, is constantly, every single second, exposed to these toxins. Never gets to step foot outside that vat, not for 1 second, of the rest of that meibomian gland's life. Does it get affected by those toxins? Yeah. It's amazing, really, that the meibomian glands hang on and keep keep working as long as they do in the face of this constant onslaught of toxins. Now, Staph epidermidis is the primary biofilm former. He's the builder. He builds prolific biofilms. Makes a moderate cytolytic toxin, but primarily he's a biofilm builder. And there's a picture of a Staph epi biofilm, courtesy Montana State University. Staph aureus, on the other hand, he builds a biofilm, but his main role in this disease process is he's the guy who makes all the poisons, all the virulence factors. And he makes some bad ones. Toxic shock syndrome we talked about. Next time you're in the bathroom throwing up after eating something bad and get food poisoning, you thank Staph aureus for that. Scalded skin syndrome. I saw one of those when I was in my internship. You never want to see another one. Poor little children, the skin just sloughing off of them. Scalded skin syndrome from a Staph aureus superantigen. All these enzymes that are being produced. Cytolytic toxins, breaking down cells. Now, why are they making these toxins? They're making these toxins to break down the host cells where they're living to liberate more food source, because this bacterial population's exploding. It's huge. They need more food, right? Everything's got to eat. Bacteria got to eat. So they make these toxins to break down the tissue so they have more food for this growing population of bacteria. Now there's a Staph aureus biofilm. See the little green dots here? Those are human leukocytes, white cells, trying to get in. They're knocking on the door. Staph aureus is not answering and not opening, can't get in. I told you they're impenetrable. That's why sometimes when doctors will use antibiotic drops to treat blepharitis, oh, I feel better. Patients feel better for a short while they're on the antibiotic drops, and then as soon as you stop, boom, right back again. Steroids, the same thing. It feels better for a while, and then stopping, right back to having problems. Because nothing can penetrate and get at the bacteria inside the biofilm. You might kill a few surface bacteria, have some surface effect, but you're not going to get at the ones in the biofilm. And look, it's right back on top of the time. Impenetrable. Who knows who Deng Xiaoping is? Any history buffs? Nobody. China. 1980s, I think. He was the communist Chinese leader of China. His favorite saying was, hide your strength and bide your time. You know where he got that saying? From bacteria. I guess not really, but he could have. Because you might be thinking, why do bacteria go to all this trouble of quorum sensing gene activation? You know, where bacteria have to communicate with each other using these molecules to sense when they're a big enough population. Why don't they just start making these toxins right from day one to liberate more food source for this population? They'd grow faster, right? Bacteria are smart, much smarter than you give them credit for. They're clever. Like I said, they've been around a long time, so they're no dummies. Think about these bacteria living on a 5-year-old lid margin. Very thin, very scant. If they were producing toxins and they were in a thin, scant biofilm, they were producing toxins to liberate more food, the host response would come in and wipe them out. There'd be an inflammatory response. You start breaking down tissue, the host is going to say, hey, hold on a second. You know, the cavalry will come over the hill and it'll wipe them out. So they wouldn't survive. So they're clever. They start building biofilm, but they don't make any toxins. They look up at the host, we're not causing any problems down here. We're just building a biofilm, leave us alone, move along, nothing to see. We're not causing any trouble, don't attack us. Clever, huh?
Yeah.
But they build, and they build, and they build. No inflammation, build, build, build. After 30, 40 years, maybe 20 years in a contact lens wearer because it's much faster, then they know they're in a thick biofilm. And they all talk to each other. Not really, but they communicate using chemicals. And they say, hey guys, we know we're in a thick biofilm because look at our numbers. So now we can start making these toxins and the host can't touch us. Now they start pumping out poisons, and they look up at the host and they're laughing. Ha ha, fooled you. Fooled you. Now try to get to us. Can't touch us. Can't touch this. Wasn't there a song back in the day? Can't touch
Yes.
this. Something hammer?
Yeah.
See that? Can't touch this. That's what the bacteria say.
Parachute touch it.
Can't touch this. So that's why there's quorum sensing gene activation, and why it's a very important part of the pathogenic process in blepharitis. So what are the stages of the dry eye blepharitis syndrome? It starts off folliculitis, myomitis, and lacrimitis, and lid destruction. So the first part of the lecture, we've gotten to inflammation. So isn't it easy to see how we get inflammation out? There's no mystery. Bacterial build biofilms. When it's thick enough, they turn on quorum sensing genes, and that produces toxins, and the toxins are inflammatory. Okay. You can take a test on that all day long, right? That's simple stuff. So that's how we get inflammation. Now, how does it progress throughout the lid? Well, stage 1 is folliculitis. It's always going to be first. Now, the stages are just as simple as the etiology here. All you have to know is a little bit of lid anatomy, and the stages are easy. Folliculitis is first because of the anatomy. The biofilm forms here first, right? Begins building there just a few days after birth. Doesn't take it too long to creep down in along that lash. There's a little space there, and it can accumulate down here in the lash bulb. And once it gets thick enough down here, quorum sensing gene activation, toxins are produced, and you start getting inflammation within the lash bulb. Now, it's typically pretty asymptomatic. The body doesn't really react to it too much, except the fact you'll get a little swelling up here around the eyelash where it comes out of the lid margin. We call it the volcano sign. The tissue kind of comes up along the lash because of edema. This whole area just gets a little edematous and swollen. Now here's evidence of folliculitis. This picture over here, this is a Caucasian, obviously, and see the swelling around that lash right there? Just from seeing that light reflex, you can see it. Now look over here in an African American patient, you can't see the swelling quite as much. I mean, you can sort of see it there, but what stands out more are the white dots, the pallor. You know, whenever you get edema, you get pallor. You can't see it here because of the white skin. You can see the, I call it the humpy bumpies, because everywhere you go, it's just like riding on an old road with speed bumps on it. Everywhere there's just bumps and swelling and all that here. Over here, you see the white dots very easily. Same process, folliculitis. Look at the pallor here though. When it's against an inflamed background, you can see the pallor. Again, all the humpy bumpies and swelling. So that's folliculitis, that's easy. Inflammation and swelling of the lash follicle. Stage 1, easy to happen, easy access in a small structure. Now, remember when I said the biofilm is nearly invisible? It's no different on the eyelids, and that's why we've missed it for years, decades as eye doctors. It's nearly invisible. It goes all the way back here to the back of the lid margin. It's a shiny, crinkly appearance, but it's so tightly adherent to the lid margin, you see right through it, and you see the tissue underneath. So that's what we see up here, tissue underneath that shiny, crinkly biofilm. But we follow that biofilm down here, follow it down, and look right here. An eyelash that's growing got stuck to the biofilm that's surrounding it, and it's going to pull a chunk off. Can you see that? That'll be a collarette right there. You can see biofilm when it starts to lift just a little bit. You just need a slightest bit of air under it, and boom, it's opaque. You can see it now. You're no longer looking right through it. So that's going to be a collarette right there. As eye doctor, we would see this. We would see, we call it mattering, encrusting. That's the best word we had for it. It didn't know what it was. Not realizing it went all the way back here. There's nothing back here to really pull a chunk off, right? So it just stays there, nice and tightly adherent. But everywhere that's going to pull a piece off, all these little places next to the eyelashes. Right, here's one. Here's one. So it's going to pull off, and you see it. There's more evidence of inflammation here. Distichiasis. These are supposed to be glands of mole, a little sebaceous gland right in behind the lashes. Inflammation makes these structures change what they do. And they'll start growing an eyelash. And they many times grow backwards into the eye and can be very symptomatic. There's more evidence of inflammation. Now we see the volcano sign here. Places where there's swelling here. But then look down here. Can you see this band of red
Yeah.
right there? That's really some swollen, dilated, inflamed vessels. Overlooked by eye doctors all the time. But what's right directly inside of the tissue of that lid from that red band there? What's directly, if you march right straight through, what would you run into? You run into the lash bulbs of all these lashes. Goes down in, you got the lash bulb here. And those lash bulbs, they're red hot. They're inflamed. And you can see the evidence right here. The inflammation is manifesting all the way out on the surface of the skin. So you know by looking at this, if there's something going on in that eyelid that's not right. Big time inflammation of the lash bulb follicles due to a thickened biofilm. They gain access easily by going right down inside the lash. Make sense? Easy stuff. Folliculitis, stage 1. I mentioned how it pulls off. See the collarette there? So where did that used to be? That used to be right down here on the lid margin, just like that prior picture I showed you. But it pulls off and the lash grows and it just kind of rides along. Now here's another misnomer. We talked about keratin. You will still hear doctors refer to this as lash dandruff. That's a terrible term. It's not dandruff. Dandruff is just flaky keratin is flaked off somewhere and dropped in. So they want us to believe that keratin fell off our eyebrows or some part of our skin, I don't know, landed in the lashes and formed a little ring around the eyelash. That's what we're supposed to believe? That doesn't make any sense, does it? It's not dandruff. It's this right here. There's where it starts, it pulls off, and now it's out here hanging on. What easy stuff to understand. It's not a mystery anymore what this stuff is. It's not dandruff, that's for sure. It's biofilm stuck in the lashes. So that's where we see it. We see that stuff and go, oh, it's blepharitis. Look at the skirt of the lashes. You know better now, right?
Yeah.
Now you're just seeing biofilm. Now if you see biofilm, there's a darn good chance that there's inflammation. So most of the time, 99.9% of the time, there will be blepharitis. But not because you got chunks of biofilm in the lashes, because you have inflammation. Look at the inflammatory signs here. See these little telangiectatic vessels? That's telling you something's going on back here in the back. Now it's subtle. It's not flamed out yet. Can't really see them here too well. But you can certainly see these, and that tells them, hey, there's something happening not just up here, but back here too. Look down here, you can kind of see, it's not in focus, you see the redness in there? Again, you have that band of inflammation right across from the lash follicles. So we need to do a better job as clinicians really looking at these eyelids. They tell us all kinds of information of what's going on and what has been going on prior to the exam. This slide makes it easy to understand why folliculitis is stage 1 and meibomian gland disease is stage 2. Look at the size of the lash follicle compared to this big, huge meibomian gland. It's just a tremendous size difference. It takes longer to accumulate and get thick in this meibomian gland than it does in a little small lash. Common sense stuff. It just takes longer. Plus, this ductule here, there's a constant outflow of meibum, of oils. Well, it's just harder to get through. It's a tight little ductule. It's not like the space beside the eyelash. This is tight here, and there's constant efflux of oils. So it just takes longer for that biofilm to encroach and work its way down the ductule into the meibomian gland, and over the years, eventually filling it up. But these biofilms, they don't stop. You remember Mount Kilauea in Hawaii? Remember the pictures of it erupting and the lava going down? Remember how that lava moved? I mean, it was so slow. Just painfully slow watching it go down. But it ran into something, it didn't stop. It just kept going, right? And it didn't matter if it was a house, a car, a road, a fence. It just kept going. That's what biofilm does. It spreads out very slow. It just keeps going. Nothing can stop it, really. And even this tight little ductule here with constant efflux of meibum, it will eventually make its way up in there. And you'll have accumulation. Now, it's not an infection in there. It's just an accumulation of biofilm inside the meibomian gland. Now, here's an obstructive meibomian gland disease. You see the little white dots there, creamy dots there? We sure don't see any little puddles of good, healthy meibomian oil, do we? It should be like a little olive oil at every little spot. little puddles. No, you don't see any. You see little creamy dots where the orifices are. What do you think those little creamy dots are?
Biofilm.
Thank you. And actually, I tricked you a little bit because there's biofilm there, but that day even a better word for that because it's biofilm mixed with meibum. Because meibomian glands are still trying to produce meibum. The bacteria down inside, they're making their biofilm. It's kind of like a competition, right? Meibum and biofilm. So this is a mixture of meibum and biofilm. I call it meibofilm. Because I think it works to mean exactly what we're looking at. So it's not purely biofilm. Now stuff out here is purely biofilm on the surface, but once you get in there, it mixes up with the meibum. It makes sense. It's common sense stuff. And when it mixes, meibum then, that mixture is thick. So the current thinking again is, well, the meibomian glands get inflamed, that alters the consistency of the meibum, it gets thickened up because it's diseased. Well, what caused the inflammation? Well, the meibomian glands getting impacted. Well, what caused them to get impacted? Well, the inflammation. What caused the inflammation? Well, the impaction. You get this circle you're going around.
I don't know.
That's how the understanding goes these days. We can do better than that. It starts with just simply bacteria are there, right? They're going to be there. We can't stop them from being there. And their biofilm accumulates in here and mixes up with the meibum. That gets thick. Because the biofilm is a polysaccharide, it's like a sugar, like rock candy. So that mixes with the meibum and it gets thicker. And it has a hard time getting out. Now it'll still push up to the top here. And we'll see it filling up there. Now if the theory holds true, and this is stage 2, that means we should already have stage 1, right? Let's look at the eyelashes. Every single one swollen, right? Look at the pallor around there. Every single one. So yeah, stage 1's been there in this patient probably 30 years, 40 years. Hard to say exactly how long. Do we see that band of inflammation across from the follicles? Sure do. See all the big dilated blood vessels here? Inflammation's been going on. Generally asymptomatic up until you get this happening. What's this here? Oh boy, sentinel vessels there. Something's going on. Telangiectatic vessels. They're reacting to something. They don't just get dilated and sit there and think they're looking pretty. They're reacting to something. That's what the body does. What are they reacting to? Well, there's already some subclinical inflammation going on in the meibomian glands. They're already starting to get inflamed. And that's what these vessels are reacting to back here against the back of the lid margin. It's not flamed out yet, but it's starting. So all kinds of signs of inflammation, and we've been ignoring it for decades. Let's go a little further along in this patient. Let's go maybe another 15 years in that patient with those little creamy dots. What do we get? We get little creamy domes. Now, do you think that dome consists of anything different than the little dots? No. We don't have to come up with some new theory to try to explain the domes. They're just an extension of what's down in the meibomian gland. So this is another area where people will say, oh, we have keratin caps that came down and sat down on top of the meibomian gland. Thank you for laughing, because it's silly. It's really silly. This is dried keratin up here. I don't know who came up with that. I guess we didn't know about biofilms, so I guess it was maybe sort of logical. I think it's something on top of the skin, or it was keratin, but it's not. Every single meibomian gland has this little dome. It's kind of a greasy looking. It doesn't even look like keratin. But yet that's what they would say. Keratin caps.
I had one years and years ago, just only one, that would form on, I think it was my left upper lid. And my doc would just take a Q-tip but it was weird that it was just that one. It felt like a foreign body sensation.
Yeah.
It would just flip my lid and so this sounds like it would not only prevent but definitely
treat all of this. Now over here again we have just a little creamy dots, and now they've turned into domes. Now look, now we have tons of inflammation, not just a few little sentinel vessels. You know, waving a red flag. Now the whole lid margin is the red flag. Look at the inflammation; it's profound now. The creamy little dots have turned into these domes. I mean, you can tell this is much further along in an inflammatory disease process. Now, why do you think that meibofilm comes up there, up to the top, where you can kind of see it here, but it doesn't come really out and spread out. You would think that it, even if it's kind of sludge like, it'll still come out and sort of dissipate with tearing and blinking and eyeball movement. It would just kind of squeeze out like toothpaste and sort of spread out and go away. It doesn't do that. What in the world? It's making these little domes. That's weird. Why does it do that? Any idea why these things are doming up and not spreading
on
out?
the top is blocking.
The biofilm on the top is blocking. Right. You watched my lecture. The biofilm on top is blocking. So now you have probably, I don't know, 20 years. I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't know these numbers, but let's say 20 years of biofilm trying to get out of my meibomian gland, running into a 60-year-old biofilm that's been on the top since nearly birth. Makes sense now. We don't need to come up with some, bizarre theory about keratin coming down and sitting on top of the meibomian gland. It's simple. Biofilms get filled up, or the meibomian glands get filled up with microfilm, tries to get out, runs into the original layer, which is on top. So imagine when you go home tonight and brush your teeth, imagine taking a toothpaste tube and sealing the top of it with saran wrap really tight and then giving a little squeeze. What are you going to get? You're going to get a dome of toothpaste, right? That's exactly what's happening here. Same consistency, same process. Surface blocking what's down inside. It just can't get out. And look at the inflammation we're causing. Oh, and by the way, you see the swelling around the pallor, swelling around every single lash, base of every lash. So this is advanced stage 2 DEBS. Now here's one that came up here as a little dome, found a little weakness in the surface biofilm for whatever reason and popped through, auto-expressed. And you see what's coming up out of there. But still, they want us to think that, oh, this is something pathologic. And that is just keratin sitting on top of whatever that stuff is. Like there's 2 different substances there. Biofilm blocking meibofilm. Any of your practices do heat express in your practice? Manual or LipiFlow or iLux?
LipiFlow.
Yeah. It's good to get that stuff out of there. But doctors who do this will sit there and push the thumb against that and watch that toothpaste come out. And still never question how they can call the top of that little column keratin and the bottom of the column something different. Makes no sense. It's all the same stuff. It's just the top happens to be a thin layer of biofilm that's been sealing it off. Easy, easy, easy to understand. Now let's talk about the lacrimal involvement. So the accessory lacrimal glands are glands of Wolfram, right up here, glands of Krauss. How in the world can those guys get involved? The biofilm's down here on the lid margin, right? How can these guys get involved way up here? They produce the maintenance tears, so the day-to-day constantly producing tears, not the big lacrimal gland that secretes when we cut onions or we cry. That one probably gets affected as well. But just for illustration, I'm showing what happens to the accessories. Because whatever happens to them can happen to the big one too. How do they get involved? How does that biofilm go from here to here? Well, there's 2 possible mechanisms. One is that biofilms shed little bits into their environment every day, constantly shedding little bits of biofilm. So let's say that happens 500 times a day for 50 years. It's likely, it's probable, that a little piece will eventually make its way up here and get a toehold. With that many little pieces going into the tear film, gets a toehold in the little gland, and then once it gets a toehold, it's there. You're not getting it out. Sticks to everything inside and fills these up pretty quickly because they're small. The other mechanism, maybe by direct extension, that the biofilm doesn't stop here on the back of the lid margin. A very thin attenuated layer works its way up and finally reaches it just directly, like a little bridge. In fact, it's likely that that occurs because you can't stop biofilms. You just can't stop them. Why would they stop? Just because they're on the inside palpebral conjunctiva. Now, it's probably, again, attenuated, I mean, very thin because of constant blinking, constant eye movement, tearing, and all that. But it probably reaches by direct extension. Maybe a combination of those 2 mechanisms, I don't know. But it definitely is responsible for aqueous insufficiency. It's part of the same disease process. And I'll prove that to you in just a minute, because that's what doctors say, well, I get the meibomian part, I get the follicles, but the lacrimals, I'm not so sure that that's part of it. Maybe that's still overlapping, diseases, right? aqueous and meibomian. See, people still think those are two separate diseases. They're not. Same disease process. Same etiology. I'll prove it to you in just a second. But anyway, here's the lacrimals. They get involved, eventually shut down. And then what do you get when you get this no tear lake back here? So it should be a nice big tear lake. You have a lot of reflux going from here to here, but you don't have that. You've got just scant reflux there. Dry as a bone. So that's stage 3. Lacrimalitis. Do we see stage 2? Well, actually, you don't even see anything. Meibomian glands now are fibrosed. There's no puddles of oil. There's no little ductules. There's no domes of anything. These meibomian glands are destroyed. They're shot. They're fibrosed. It's like they don't exist. And you can just tell by looking back here. Tons of little telangiectatic vessels. Lots of inflammation going on, right? Is stage 1 present? Holy cow, look at the size of the edema around these lashes. It's huge. You see that? Big, swollen. We ignore that as eye doctors. As eye doctors, we were never trained how to look at the base of the lash. And you will discover a history of that eyelid by looking at the base of the eyelash. It'll tell you if inflammation is there. And the size of the edema will tell you how long it's been there. Now this has been here a while. This is the little old lady who walks in and says, "Doctor, my eyelashes are all falling out and I can't wear mascara anymore." And that's her main concern. She can't wear mascara anymore. She should be concerned about a lot more than that, right? She's not making any tears at all. Lacrimal glands are shut. These have been going downhill for a long time. Meibomians, they're gone. Lacrimals are being attacked. You see evidence of inflammation? Look at this band, this red band. All these patients who have lacrimal insufficiency will have this big red band showing that their lacrimal bulbs are hot and inflamed. This is why I say that blepharitis, you can't diagnose it based on scurf. Is there any scurf here? No, there's no chunks of anything in those lashes. 2 reasons. What does an eyelash have to be doing before it can pull a chunk of anything off the eyelid margin? It has to be growing.
Growing, yeah.
It has to be growing to pull anything off, right? Are these lashes growing? No. They're barely hanging on. They're hanging on for dear life.
One's turning in.
They're turning in, misdirected. There's already a bunch that have been lost. So they're hanging on for dear life. They couldn't pull anything off the lid. The other reason is that bacteria become their own worst enemy. They destroy everything that's producing moisture on these lids, and moisture is a key component of biofilm. Remember, surface, nutrient, and moisture. So no moisture, no prolific production of biofilm. So eventually the biofilm sort of sloughs off or wears off over time. But too late now, the damage is done. This lid is shot. It's shot, it's done. No obvious biofilm. Now it's still there, you can see the shiny crinkle. There's still a little thin layer there. But it's not like some of the patients you guys see where it's just totally matted up and crusted up. At least those eyelids are still making some moisture. They have a thick biofilm like that. This eyelid is done. Now they still need treatment. Still need treatment. Get what's biofilm there, get it off of there, put the patient on steroids, and try to rescue what you can from that eyelid. Now I said I would prove that aqueous insufficiency is part of the same disease process. Every day in our practices, we see patients that walk in, say, "Doctor, my eyes are burning, can't read very long, watery, I got to drop a tear into my cheek," and try refracting. I mean, man, they're a hell of a refract, because it's always, every time they blink it changes, right? You guys refract?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They're very difficult patients to work up, because everything's constantly changing. Because what's going on? They have no lipids, and they're drying out real fast, right, between blinks. So the doctor will back up, will say, "Well, Ms. Jones, you've got evaporative dry eye disease." And then she looks at the doctor, "Doctor, aren't you listening? I've got too many tears. I'm teary-eyed, I'm always constantly watering." And he's got to explain, "Well, you don't have the lipid part. It's evaporative dry eye. So you don't have lipids, so your tears are not stable. They evaporate easily off your cornea. You make more aqueous, so yeah, you have too much aqueous, and you have no lipids." That's what's going on. That's stage 2, meibomian gland disease. Have you ever seen that scenario flipped? Meaning, have you ever seen a patient walk in and they've got lots of healthy meibomian glands just chugging out the oil, chugging out biofilm, oil everywhere, maybe a drop of oil running down the cheek, and no aqueous?
No.
You never see that. And yet they've been telling us that aqueous insufficiency is a separate disease process. It's just overlapping meibomian gland disease. No, we can't be sold that bill of goods anymore.
Right.
Not that anybody's being nefarious about it, they just don't understand the disease, and that's how they've been trying to explain it. It's a separate disease process. How could it be the same? Meibomian glands are, down lower in the lid, and aqueous is up top. But no, we never see that. And I've given this lecture to thousands of doctors, and to this day I have yet to have one person say, oh yeah, I see that. If aqueous insufficiency was a separate disease process than meibomian gland disease, then wouldn't you expect to see it show up in front of meibomian gland disease sometimes?
You're exactly right.
At least half the time, maybe. At least once or twice in your career,
Yeah.
you see it show up first. But it doesn't, never does, because it's the same disease. It can't show up in front of meibomian gland disease, just because it takes so much longer to build that biofilm bridge all the way to the lacrymus. They can fill up meibomian glands relatively quickly. It takes a while to build the bridge, so it just takes longer. Always has to follow meibomian gland disease. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Does now.
Common sense, easy stuff.
I have seen patients though that have very, very oily skin, that their lids seem to be very oily as well.
Oh yeah, you'll see hypersecretion of the oil. You'll see seborrheic dermatitis, where you get an inflammation of the sebaceous glands, and they pump out that kind of waxy, greasy looking stuff in the skin. Yeah. Separate process. And then there's Sjogren's disease. You can get an autoimmune process that attacks the aqueous production of the lids. You also get dry mouth. And that's an autoimmune disease. We're not here to talk about autoimmune diseases today. We're talking about blepharitis, lid margin disease. And you don't see those patients show up like that. Even in Sjogren's, they don't show up that way. With lots of lipids and no aqueous. So we have to stop thinking about the disease that way. It's the same disease process. It's just because of biofilm. Once you understand biofilm, it's amazing. It's like the scales fall from your eyes. It just seems so obvious, right? And it makes such common sense. Well, who likes the biofilm now? You all know what Demodex is, right? What's a Demodex? A little critter, a little mite that lives in the eyelashes of some of these older patients. And they get a big, thick, healthy biofilm. Demodex gets introduced, and he comes out at night and he grazes away. He loves biofilm because biofilm is a sugar, it's a polysaccharide.
Oh, yeah.
So he loves being up there. He's going for dessert. He'll eat anything. He's a scavenger, but nothing better than sugar. So he's up there eating away. Comes out at night to do it. Doesn't like the light, so during the day he's head down along the lash. Comes out at night, eats, lays eggs. They're fornicating up there on our lid margins. All through the night. So they did a study, Dr. Hank Craig did a study that showed that by just physically removing biofilm with Blefx, did just as good a job as any of these tea tree oil products out there at removing the Demodex. Just physically removing their food source and removing them.
So they're mites?
They're mites.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, really? Everything's like that.
22 years and I don't know how I escaped not knowing.
Oh, I should have some of my slides up here showing you. There's actually a little movie showing them crawling along the lash. Yeah, it's.
I mean, I've heard of mites, but I've never heard them called Demodex.
Anybody? Yeah, you're all gonna get one.
I'm wearing mine back.
Now look.
My son will love this.
Understand that
I'm crawling over here already. I don't know.
we go all the way to Chernobyl to get these mites. They grow them big at Chernobyl, but they're very gentle. They don't bite. They're housebroken. They're potty trained. So it's safe to take them home with you. They won't give you any problems.
It's like a big candy.
A gummy mite.
You can go fishing with them on weekends if you want.
I know.
So what are all the current ways that we're treating this disease in practices who don't have Blefx? You guys, right? Home scrubs.
Yep.
Baby shampoo, OcuSoft scrubs, different commercial preparations to try to scrub the lashes. It doesn't work very well, as we all know. Patients just can't do it.
If they'll do it.
If they'll even do it, and most of them won't. If they try, they might get the lashes clean, but they won't get the biofilm off the main shelf of that lid margin where I showed you, where it seems to be invisible. They can't get back there and get that off. you can maybe clean it out of the lashes. And they'll feel a little bit better when they do that many times. But they still have biofilm in their meibomian glands on the surface. So, you know, in some ways it's kind of counterproductive to make a patient feel better. They think they are better.
Right.
And they'll sort of stop treating and stop taking it seriously when the damage is still ongoing. Because it's still there on the lashes, it's still in my meibomians, and it's still on the main surface. It's just out of the lashes now. So they get rid of some of that foreign body sensation. But the disease is still ongoing. Damage is still being done.
So I'm sure we'll get to that, but is there any, what do you do after you do the Blepharitis
Yeah,
treatment?
we'll talk about that. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about the follow-up here. So what's different about Blepharitis is no longer are we just trying to wipe away stuff or clean stuff, or you know, we're not dumping chemicals on the eye to try to suppress inflammation, all those kinds of things, artificial tears, nighttime movements. We're just going in, we're getting rid of the source of the problem, removing the biofilm. And again, that's simple. That's just as simple as the disease is to understand. We're just removing biofilm. It's repeated every 4 to 6 months. It's private pay. And we remove the source of inflammation, not trying to suppress inflammation. Now we'll go through the mechanics of how to hold the handpiece. This is just for your test. Joe, I've kind of previewed a lot of this anyway. I've got a little test coming up you guys are going to take. But essentially you hold it vertically. You want to spin horizontally on the lash line. It's a good, variable, firm treatment. What's funny about this treatment is the harder you push and the more aggressive you are on the eyelids, the better it feels. Now that's the counterintuitive part, right? Because we always want to be gentle with our patients, right? Be gentle, be easy. And people will go up and they'll try to do a Blepharitis and be a little soft and gentle. I don't want to hurt you now. They're going like this. When really what they should be doing is this.
Massaging it, yeah.
Not just massaging it.
Just working
I say,
it, yeah.
I want you to clean that lid like you're trying to rip it off the eye, rip it off the face. I want you to attack it. Attack the lid margins. That's what it takes to get the biofilm off. And what you'll find is, it's more comfortable. Imagine someone walking up to your back and just barely touching your back with their fingertips. It's going to tickle, right?
Yeah.
Stop that immediately. Cut that out. I don't want to be tickled. But if someone walks up and gives you a good back scratching, yeah, right there, that's the spot. Right, feels good. Same thing with massage. A good, firm massage, I'll give you 3 hours to cut that out. It feels good. That's what Blepharitis is like. The more aggressive you do it, the better it feels for the patient. And you got to overcome that fear that you're going to hurt the patient. You got to overcome the fear of being close to the eyeball. You'll bump the eyeball all day long. You don't hurt anything. So don't be afraid of getting up on top of the lid margin and scrubbing it. Even if you bump the globe a little bit, you're not going to hurt anything. We've had over 500,000 procedures done. Not a single complication. No corneal abrasions, no nothing.
Do you numb the patient first?
Yeah, you put some numbs in. But the little sponge we spin, it's a PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, very soft. When it gets wet, dripping wet, well, you can't do any damage to that thing. None. So firm pressure, and then you do a little bit of a rinse and you go to the second eye. So Blepharitis turns out being it's exfoliative, it's atraumatic. Complete removal of biofilm, and here's what's an important point. We're debulking the densities down to below quorum sensing. So we think we're turning off the ones that are left behind. Turning off the quorum sensing, so they're not making toxins anymore of the ones that are being produced from that point forward. So that's why patients feel so much better when they get their biofilms removed. We get rid of the toxins physically that are in the biofilm. And we tell the bacteria, stop making them. And they stop for a while, we think. It's private pay, we get excellent acceptance, and we eliminate the source of inflammation on the lid margin. Again, I keep harping on that because it's the first time that anybody's attempted to eliminate the source of inflammation. And that's what this does. We do nothing inside the meibomians or the lash follicles. That's more the job of lipoflow or an ilex or manual expression. So here's some before and afters. Same patient, a little red over here from getting treated just now. Still have your band of inflammation. That's going to be there for a while. That hasn't changed. But now you get rid of all that sticky biofilm. You've seen that picture before. Now look after treatment. You still have your telangiectatic vessels. That hasn't changed. But eventually, if you keep the biofilm going, those will go away. Same thing here. Makes a big difference. So, anyone need a break? Bathroom break, get a drink, coffee, anything like that? We can take a short break if you want, or you want to keep on going. It's up to you guys.
A little break would be good.
A little break would be good? Okay.
Sure.
I'll say 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then we're going to get into how to get the patient to yes. Now, this is why you're here, guys. Right? I can teach anybody the nature of the disease. I want you to understand it so you can talk to doctors about it. But the real crux of what you need to do is to get out there in these practices and teach the doctors how to get the patient to yes. And it's not difficult. So that's where we'll pick up there as soon as you come back. Just 5 minutes.
Okay.